Well, hello there. This is the Human Suplex Machine, and my name is Taz, and you are fixing to listen to Mike Delivers with none other than Mike Biseglia. Now, Mike and I, we worked together for quite some time, and I was a co-host on a show that he was the esteemed producer of, and had a great time working with Mike. I felt he was a very intelligent man, a very focused man, yet a very unassuming man, kind but simple. That's the best way I could put Mike. But does a heck of a podcast, I got to tell you, and a lot of people are talking about it. So you did the right thing by downloading this thing. But so in closing, worked with Mike, had a great time with him. Do I miss Mike? No. Do I ever think of Mike? Absolutely not.
Welcome inside Mike Delivers from his wife's 2017 Toyota Rav4. Here's your host, Mike Biseglia.
That's right, this is Mike Delivers, episode number 69. And I'm your host, Mike Biseglia, and I'm coming to you from my wife's closet in Bloomfield, New Jersey. One of these days, I'll mosey on out over to the car to record the episode in there, but for now, I'm recording it inside my wife's closet. And I will not do the gimmick of talking about stealing food from somebody's delivery order because that was nasty to begin with. It was a joke, people. But also because right now in a pandemic, if you're the delivery driver and you're picking up someone's food and you are doing that, you should be sued. Disgusting. Don't do that, people. You can find this podcast where all major pods are found. Of course, that includes Stitcher, Spotify, an Apple podcast. And if you go on Apple, give a 5-star rating and leave a comment. All comments will be read at the end of episodes, so please feel free to reach out. Leave some comment on the Apple podcast. Social media-wise, you can find me Mike Delivers Pod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mike Delivers Podcast is also brought to you in part by the Lawnmower 3.0. Head over to manscaped.com. You can find the Lawnmower 3.0. Use promo code Mike Delivers and get 20% off and free shipping on the Lawnmower 3.0. What is the Lawnmower 3.0? Well, it's something that's used to help trim your ball hair. It's third-generation trimmer. It features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to prevent manscaping accidents. Millions of balls around the world have talked about this. If you go back to episode 68, you can actually hear my one-on-one interview with my testicle as we talk about how the Lawnmower 3.0, promo code Mike Delivers, all one word, has really helped out and not only saved my relationship with my balls. Well, that's it. It's really just saved my relationship with my balls. My balls are happy now. They have told me on the record, episode 68, you can hear that full interview. But use promo code Mike Delivers. Show notes has information where you can get hooked up with the Lawnmower 3.0. Also in my show notes, you can find more information from my guys at the O'Brien Creative Group. They've created my sick-ass logo, Mike Delivers. And more than just a logo, it's really brand identity. When you see the multiple logos that I have now, you think of Mike Delivers. They're the guys that have helped me out with my food videos. If you've seen them when I'm doing my food reviews for some of the great local spots in town, they've put the border around the videos I do. So it just enhances the videos. It looks great. So it's more than just logos. It's social media engagement. It's brand identity. Could not do this without these guys. So head on over to the o'briencreativegroup.com. Information in my show notes. Thank you guys very much. theprosclub.com. It's a place where I'm housing multiple podcasts. I'll talk about that at the end of the episode, but it's really important. It's really something that I'm valuing right now, so I want to explain it to everybody. I'll do that at the end of the episode. And if you haven't heard about my Patreon page, Mike Delivers on patreon.com. Sign up, get bonus content on Mike Delivers. Find out how I crashed my wife's 2007 Toyota Rav4. That was a terrible evening. That was early on in 2020. I've detailed a whole story about what happens. There's a story about marinara that's involved in that I think you guys will find very interesting. So Mike Delivers. It's on the patreon.com. You can get that too through your phone. You know, if you just download the Patreon app. And besides that one podcast, there's about 10 on there now, bonus videos, blooper reels. It's just a place to get the inside scoop on the Mike Delivers podcast. More and more content is out there, and I'm pumping it out too because, I've been quarantined in the house, and, well, everybody really has, so there's just a lot more recording to get to, videos to get to. So Patreon is the place for that. I got an interview coming up in just a matter of moments with Keith McPherson. He's the host of Talkin Nets on the John Boy Media platform. And he also, besides hosting his podcast, Nets, he does Yankee stuff also. Pretty cool. He was an Uber Eats driver in the northern New Jersey area. So we got a lot to talk about. We got a little Nets, we got a little food, we got a little food delivery. Excited to chat with Keith McPherson and for you guys to hear that conversation. Cool the way I met him, too. I went over to the John Boy Media Center where I interviewed John Boy, got to talk to him and got to interview him about his time as a food delivery driver pre the gimmick with the apps and Uber Eats and all the other ones out there, DoorDash, etc. But it was fun to talk with Jimmy O'Brien, John Boy, and he told me about his food stories, and it was really fun. So I'm leaving his office. I went there, actually went to their offices in the Bronx. This was months ago now, obviously. And as I'm leaving, I walked down the street and went, shit, didn't take a picture. I wanted to make sure I had a picture that I could use for everything on social media, pump it out there, etc. Went back in, and that's where I met Keith, who was just coming to the office, and he was wearing a Nets shirt, or a Nets hat, excuse me. He's wearing a Nets hat, and at that moment I'm like, okay, Nets hat. We start talking. Told him what I was doing with the podcast, and he told me, like, hey, Mike, I was actually an Uber Eats driver myself. So from that, we had a lot to talk about. So finally hooked up here, connected, and I'm excited for Keith to come on to the podcast. A lot of fun college stories that I wanted to get to. Weird transition, Mike. What are you saying? College stories. Well, in the previous episode, I talked a lot about my experience in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I've also talked about my love of the Nets and everything that has been so much fun as a Nets fan growing up in New Jersey. And so you've gotten a lot of taste of that. Something I haven't done a lot of yet is really talked about my college experience. So here's the idea. There's not as much going on. We're kind of all stuck in the house right now. I haven't been on the road yet. So I wanted to find some different ways to bring you content and bring you behind the scenes of what I have, gone through in my life. So a friend of mine is Josh Guterman. Josh went to Syracuse University, and we were friends at SU. Josh is a big fan of this podcast. He did one of my cold opens, and him and I have been texting a bunch lately about just reminiscing on some stories from college. And I was like, Josh, these stories are great, and it's been fun for you to say things I couldn't even remember or forgot about. I want you to record a little mini, take you down memory lane of some college stories of mine. So every week I'll introduce a new one. You'll get to hear Josh's voice and just get a little flavor of what college was like for me. By the end of this, you're going to go, you are a fucking loser. A lot of that is true, but that's fine. It got to where I am right now, which is in my wife's closet, recording a podcast. So there you have it. Anyway, so here's some true SU stories. Josh is going to deliver them to you each and every week. Take it away, Josh.
The story is about the wine. So at some point during our time at Syracuse, Mike and I decided that we should drink more wine. It would be cool if we drank wine. So we had gone to Wegmans and we had purchased a bottle of red wine and a really cheap corkscrew. And one night, while we were hanging out, Mike said, we got to drink this wine. Let's get it open. So tried to use the corkscrew. And of course, we're 20-something college students. We have no idea what we're doing. And we start destroying the corkscrew. And get to this point where we want to drink this wine. It's the only alcohol we have at the time. We've got to open it. So we've got a knife and we're trying to get the cork out of the bottle. And it's just, it's coming in pieces and pieces. And I'm working at it. I'm trying to, I'm hitting it. I'm trying to wedge it out. And Mike's doing the same thing. All of a sudden, boom! The cork flies out. The wine explodes onto the ceiling of the apartment in a 5-foot diameter stain. And The rest of the cork that remains that we had broken up into pieces is floating in the wine, and we, I believe, drank that entire bottle of wine that night with the cork in it. And that is a true Syracuse story.
All right, thank you, Josh, for the story. We'll have another one for everybody next week. I'm enjoying these bad boys. They've been a lot of fun to hear them. I had a good laugh Friday night when he sent me over a couple. Some serious laughs my way. I hope you guys enjoy them too. All right, I'm an Uber Eats driver. I'm a big Nets fan, so why not connect with somebody who has a Nets podcast and was an Uber Eats driver himself? Yes, good idea, Michael. Here's my conversation with Keith McPherson. He is the host of Talkin Nets on John Boy Media. We get into our love of Nets. We talk about food delivery and everything in between. Joined right now by Keith McPherson. He's part of the John Boy Media powerhouse. He's the host of Talkin Nets, and he's also a former Uber Eats driver. So I figured what a perfect combination to come on this podcast. We'll talk a little Uber Eats. We'll talk a little Nets. Keith, how are you doing during this crazy time?
Hey, Mike, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well, I guess as well as I could be doing, staying at home, trying to work from home and pass the time and be entertained and also be informed and optimistic about where we're going with all of this.
Yeah, I feel like, it's funny because I've done a bunch of interviews now talking to people during this whole madness, during this whole crazy time. And it's like standard first question. I just have to talk to people and ask them, how are you doing? How is everything going? Because it's just such a wild time and different circumstances for different people that it's comforting, I think, to hear answers like that, Keith, just knowing, all right, you're doing well. You've got a lot on your plate and things are good.
Yeah, I mean, it comes in waves. 1 week could be a little tougher than the other. 1 week could be a little faster than the other. 1 week you might get some good news or, this past week people got some money in their account. I haven't gotten mine yet, but it's day by day, week by week, everyone hoping for the best. And like I said, it hit waves. In the beginning, it was kind of like, all right, we're getting a little bit of a break. We're going to be home. We're going to see how this is. A couple weeks in, the numbers started changing as far as the amount of people that were sick, how many people have it. And I felt like more people were coming out and saying whether they know someone that had it. And then it went from, okay, I know someone that had it. Or has it, and now I know someone that is in the hospital from it, or now we all have pretty much heard of someone that has passed from it because we have celebrities and athletes like Karl Anthony Towns' mother passed. Like, it goes in waves. So overall, I'm good. It's an interesting experience, and I'm taking it as best as I could.
And you're the host of Talkin Nets on John Boy Media. What have you guys been talking about Nets-wise without any Nets games to talk about? The last Nets game, and I actually was watching a clip of this on YouTube, and it feels like, I think, a million years ago, was the Nets win versus the Lakers in L.A. That was the Nets' last game, the Nets' last win. What have you guys been talking about Nets-related?
Well, we talked about that win for the first 3 weeks after. It was kind of like, it was like, hey, we're the champions. We beat the Lakers. Everyone said LeBron and AD were going to be the champions this year. They were looking like the favorites, but the last game on record, the Nets go to the Staples Center and beat them in Game 7. So we are the champions effectively. We've just been talking about the NBA. Honestly, the podcast was formatted so that we did a podcast every 2 games. Me personally, I don't want to talk about 3 or 4 games, especially doing notes and then trying to think back to, 3 games ago. It gets tough. So we were formatted where we play 2 games, we have a pod. We play 2 games, we have a pod. And without any games, we took a little bit of a break. And it really was a break to just kind of feel everything out. And then also talk to everyone at John Boy Media to say, hey, how are we going to roll out our podcast? Let's make a little bit of a schedule. Let's make let's make a plan where people can look to us and say, okay, these guys got a podcast coming out every day. We didn't want everyone's podcast coming out on Monday. We landed on our podcast coming out on Thursday. So we've been recording on Wednesdays, which is good because in the middle of the week, you can kind of take what happened the week before, whether it's the horse tournament on a Friday night and talk about it on Wednesday, or the NBA 2K tournament and talk about it, and then kind of look into the weekend ahead. So it's just really shifted from just Nets talk to NBA news, whatever's going on in the NBA, and whatever we want to talk about that we think might possibly have to do with the Nets.
So looking back at your Nets fanhood, I remember we crossed paths because I went into your headquarters in the Bronx, and this is months ago, okay, everybody, so this wasn't like recently. This is when life was allowed to move and go to different places. And I had an interview with Jimmy, and we were talking about his experience as an Uber Eats driver. And I remember we crossed paths because I came back and I was like, oh crap, I forgot to get a photo. I wanted to get a photo for the podcast. And then we met, and you were like rocking some of your Nets gear, and I had some of my Nets gear. And I think there's something like anytime a Nets fan runs into another Nets fan, there's an instant connection. And I was like, we have to talk, we have to chat. And then you told me you were an Uber Eats driver, and I was like, wait a minute. And had done some work as Lyft as well. So I was like, we've got to chat. So I think it's just always cool running into different Nets fans wherever you might be.
Yeah, I remember that day exactly. And it's like the universe never unconnects type of thing. If I would have missed a train or got on a later bus, I probably would have missed you in the office because you were on your way out. I was on my way in. And that exact day was February 10th. The Nets were playing the Pacers that night. And I was going to the Yes Network to do our first ever Brooklyn Nets watch along, which was an idea that came about for the Yes Network to do a live stream of fans watching the game while the game was going on. It was an away game, and I remember seeing you in the office, and as soon as I noticed that Brooklyn Nets logo on your hat, I'm like, let me ask, because there's not that many of us, but there are. Like, we're kind of hidden in between people. It's not as prominent as the Yankee hat or the Yankee logo. And when I see a Nets fan, like you said, you gotta chat them up for a second to see if they're just, into the style and the look. It is a very stylish logo, the black and white hat, or if they're actually like Nets fans, fans of the new Nets team, being in Brooklyn for the last few years, or if they're, New Jersey Nets diehards that are still rocking with the Nets and have just carried over and switched logos. So it was great to connect with you and see that. And I felt great about it because I think I was wearing my my Brooklyn it was my Nets hat, but I think it might have said Garden State on it. And
that I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly because the days are blurred now. It seems so long ago, but I just remembered I had on a Nets hat. You had it on too, and I think I might have been wearing the old Nets logo, but in black and white. So it was a great moment.
Yeah.
You Nets fans out there listening know when you run into someone that's also a Nets fan, it's a conversation that you don't always get to have. So I was pumped to meet you, and then I don't know how we talked. I think you said you were doing Mike Delivers Pod. And you gave me the premise of the podcast, and I was like, "Oh, I've got some experience driving Lyft, and I just, I dabbled in Uber Eats for maybe 2-3 months in the end of 2019."
So, what was that like dabbling in Uber Eats at the end of 2019? Two parts. One, where were you doing deliveries? So, just start with that background, and then from there, what did you make of all of it?
So I live in North Jersey, by the Hoboken, Weehawken area. And honestly, when you get an Uber Eats, it can be anywhere within 20 minutes from that area. So I could be in Secaucus, I could be in Jersey City, I could be in North Bergen. So I was just in this North Jersey area, Hudson County, really, and just going wherever it would tell me. It could be Red Robin, it could be McDonald's for just a $4 or $5 McDonald's order.
Yep.
It gets interesting. It could be I remember I did a coal-fired pizza, and I wanted to eat the pizza. It smelled so good.
That's right.
But for me, I dabbled in it because on my journey that I've been on, becoming a content creator, becoming a podcast host, becoming what people call an influencer, I guess, in the sports world, I had to leave my corporate job, and I had to find any little ways to make money while I was still focusing on video editing and editing podcasts and putting myself out there on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or whatever it was. I couldn't be full-time in New York City like I once was. So I picked up Lyft and I picked up Uber Eats. And Uber Eats really got my attention almost a year ago to this time. I worked at a restaurant called House of Q in Weehawken, and they had Uber Eats there, and I saw how many different people were showing up to do Uber Eats, and I had never worked in a restaurant before. I just was in between jobs and figuring out how to get myself, on the scene with the Yankees and with the Nets and with sports stuff. And I worked there in March and April of last year. And like I said, I saw people coming up on bikes. I saw people coming up on motorized bikes. I saw every different kind of shape or size or different walk of life of person pull up to pick up an order for Uber Eats. And I started to think to myself, I'm like, all right, I'm standing here making $14 an hour. I'd never worked in a restaurant before. I was hosting because I had no bartending skills or serving skills. And, I was the guy handing off the bag to the Uber Eats drivers and hitting the app for us to make sure, like, okay, check, it was delivered, good to go. And that's when I started thinking, I was like, okay, now I've driven Lyft and I've had some experiences with random people in my car that haven't been pleasant. I'm like, these guys are just driving around food. I'm like, I might want to step into that world. And then once I stopped working there, I did a bunch of things. But then later in 2019, I gave it a shot.
See, that's cool on a lot of fronts because, I mean, from my perspective, I'm using Uber Eats. I'm a producer at CBS Sports Radio, but I wanted to make more money. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that sometimes media jobs don't pay well, and you live in this area, you need to make more money. So I did Uber Eats as a side gig, a side hustle, and then all of a sudden I was like, the stories from the road are just tremendous, and it's sort of taken a life of its own now with all the podcast work that I'm doing. So hearing that, almost like a similar circumstance, you wanted to find Uber Eats and Lyft as a way to help your income. What were you doing before? As you mentioned that, you quit your full-time job, you left your full-time job, that you wanted to take this route and everything you're doing now with John Boy and you wanted to get that extra income working at Lyft and Uber Eats. What were you doing before that you said, you know what, I'm ready to take this adventure and take this chance?
So I was in media as well, entertainment. I worked at MTV from 2015 to 2017. I worked at Fubo TV, which if you're a sports fan, Fubo TV, digital streaming platform. I worked there in 2017 into 2018. And then I had a brief stint at Rock Nation in 2018, going into the summer, like spring into summer. And right then and there was where I just experienced enough, saw enough, and felt enough confidence in myself where I was like, I know enough about social media. I was a social media manager, digital marketing manager. I ran social media at MTV for MTV2, for Nick Cannon's show Wild and Out. I was there for Guy Code. I was there for Charlemagne and, different hip hop artists. And I learned a lot at MTV Viacom. Great place to be if you're trying to be in entertainment. And then I went to Fubo and I ran the show there for their social media. I was the first social media hire they ever made. So I was creating their Instagram, Twitter, Facebook content, managing it all day. And then I started to learn how to video edit. I went to Rock Nation. And I was fortunate enough to be the NFL lead at Rock Nation. So I'm logging into Todd Gurley's Instagram account to post a Gatorade ad for him. I'm logging into Leonard Fournette's Instagram account to fulfill his contract with Under Armour and post the video they made of him. And I'm talking to Geno Smith every day. And I'm talking to different NFL players, trying to figure out what they need. Saquon Barkley had got signed that year, got drafted by the Giants that year. And, I meet him and it was great. But I started to see things differently where I was like, okay, I need to have something from my own, with my own face, my own name, my own likeness. And I hear you when you talk about wanting extra money, side money. When I worked at MTV, that's where I discovered Lyft. I got a promotional email that said, if you complete your first 100 rides in 30 days, they would throw in an extra $500 or 1,000. Right. It was either 500 or 1,000. Whatever it was, I didn't care. But at the time, I was living in an apartment, and I had a garage with this apartment, and I had a 2018 Chevy Cruze that I leased, that I got finessed into a lease, and I wasn't using the car at all because I was commuting into the city to work at MTV. So I was only making like $1,300 per check at MTV, and I wanted to go to a few different baseball games that year. It was interleague. I remember the Yankees were playing in Pittsburgh and they were also playing in Chicago. And I wanted to make those trips with my fiance. And I was like, how do I figure out how to make the money to, go on these trips and see the Yankees on the road? I really want to see these ballparks. I really want to see the Yankees. And Lyft was my way of doing that. Here's a funny story with that. I went to the orientation for Lyft and they started my 30-day clock as soon as I left that orientation. So I didn't realize that until about 10 days later. So I had to do my first 100 rides in 19 days, not 30.
They had what's an orientation? Like you had to physically go somewhere and they taught you this is how you're a Lyft driver?
Yeah, this is going back. So like now there's no orientation. It's really all just online. But in 2016 or 2017, I think it was 2017, I went to this like auto shop. It was like an auto zone, and they had Lyft set up, and we had this like orientation where there was about 15 of us sitting there watching a presentation, and at the end, you show your paperwork, your ID, and then someone signs off. And then from that point on, you get your sticker and you're allowed to go drive for Lyft. So I did that and I grinded. I'm telling you, like I would work at MTV from 10 a.m. to 6, commute home, get home at 7, eat real quick, and then go out and drive from like 7:38 to like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, go to sleep, commute back in and do that. And then weekends, I would crush it. I would start the weekend driving at like 6, 7 in the morning. Really because I was trying to knock out these rides. But what I ended up finding, like you said, was the stories from the road. I ended up learning, I'm originally from the Jersey Shore area. So driving Lyft, I ended up learning all the highways and routes and roads and different places in North Jersey. And then I also met so many different people. Like every experience isn't bad. I know there's so many horror stories that come from Lyft and Uber. But I met some influential people. I met some important people. And I just met some people that had great stories and conversation for me. And I was able to, kick my story to them too. And, a lot of people, they want to know, what do you do? Where are you from? Like, is this your full-time gig or not? And I had some great experiences picking up random people in like 2017 driving for Lyft.
I think that's something I've learned as an Uber Eats driver, and I've noticed on the road. And actually, like I'll talk to different Uber Eats drivers when we're stuck at a restaurant, waiting for an order. It's something I learned, and something I didn't know going into this was the amount of interesting people that you meet, and the amount and people just with regular everyday jobs that are on the side doing this hustle work to make a couple extra bucks, if it's in your case what trying to fulfill and everything that your dreams and planned, and just people that are trying to make a couple extra bucks for their family. And I think there's maybe like a stigma attached to some of these drivers, like, oh, this is what you do on the side. But when you get to know people and you get to interact with people, it's really amazing, as you mentioned, the content, the stories, and the connections that you make.
Yeah, and it's not something that I ever expected to take from it. It's not something I expected to gain. But I remember, there's a bunch of stories I could tell. There's no way we could fit them on the pod. But I remember writing in a notebook, like little stories. I picked up this woman who was struggling with this. And, she was so happy that I was, nice enough to pick her up, pick her kid up, take them to the store. And, you just, I don't know, it kind of makes you feel like what you're doing isn't as, regular, or I feel like there's like a stipulation around Lyft, Uber, people that drive for Lyft, Uber. And it's going to change, but there's like a negative connotation around it. Like, oh, you drive for Lyft, or, oh, you drive for Uber, as if it's beneath people, as if it's something that everyone shouldn't do. And it's ride sharing and it's delivery driving. You're doing something to help people eat. You're doing something to help people get around. You have a vehicle. Some people are less fortunate and don't have a car and don't have access, don't have a license. Like, you're doing something that it's putting a little bit of money in your pocket, but it's also, there's more that you can take from it than just the dollars. It's not like you can make a killing, and they have changed it so that there's different bonuses in the app and, different things you could hit, but it's not like you're really going to get rich from driving Lyft or Uber Eats. So what you get from it outside of money is big as well.
And I think I've gotten the sense, and you're similar to me. You mentioned before, you're working at a restaurant and there's only so much you can really do, or so much you can make on the time clock. But there's something addictive about, well, this is on me. When I go out for 3 hours or I go out for 6 hours, I make the kind of money that's, obviously it's a lot of variables and where you go and people tip, but I put out that extra hour, I do that extra second hour, I can make this extra $10, which becomes $20 and $30. And that like addictive rush can come from doing this.
Yeah, it's like a game. It's like a video game. And, both of us are sports guys. I'm a very competitive guy. I played sports growing up, and I have the mentality when I get in the car, it's like, okay, I have a goal here. Like if I'm getting in the car from 6 to 10 doing deliveries, I plan on hitting a certain amount of deliveries, and I also might not get out of the car until I make a certain amount of money. And there is skill to it. And there is, just a way to to go about it. And, you know, it comes from practice. When you first get in the car to do Lyft or Uber Eats and you're very green and just unsure of yourself, you're not going to be that great. But as you get into a role and you get familiar and you get experience, you know what areas are the hot areas. You know what times are the hot times. You know which ways to avoid traffic and get you stuck in traffic where you're going to kill your own time. You kind of learn how to play. You learn how to compete. And I enjoyed it for the most part. The only thing about Lyft or not Lyft, but Uber Eats more so is dealing with the drop-offs. Because you're gonna end up in some places that you have no idea. Like, you're gonna end up in someone's apartment. You're gonna end up in someone's neighborhood, and it's a place you've never been, and you just really get this like you say, this adrenaline rush of like, okay, where am I going? All right, let's get this drop as soon as I can get it dropped, you know, and move on to the next one. And sometimes that can get a little bit you know, not out of hand, but I've been in some people's apartments that I didn't want to be in. I've been in some neighborhoods I did not want to be in, and places where I'm just like, okay, I can't even find this apartment, or I can't even find a place to park to get to this apartment.
Yeah, it's funny. And then like this anger will get over you. I remember going into some person's apartment you can't find. There's no instructions, and I'm like, how do you not give the drivers just some help and some hints? I'm right. I'm at the apartment complex. You got a code to get in. There's no information. Then you call them, and they're like surprised that you're giving you a call. I'm like, hey, you live in apartment 502. I don't know how to get in here. I don't have a key. And they're like, oh, well, I can't come down. I was like, well, how do I get up here? And then like this anger, rage. I don't want to go there. Now I'm getting myself upset. What was the best tip you ever got on a Lyft or on an Uber Eats journey?
Well, on an Uber Eats, I delivered not too far from me. I delivered into this nice apartment, like a high-rise apartment in North Bergen, West New York area. And the lady did have like special instructions to like park, come through the back door, take the service elevator up, come to her apartment. And when I got there, nice young lady, and she also had a shirt on that like had a badge on it, led me to believe that she was a police officer. And you know, I got her food so quick. It was from this diner, and I just remember that it smelled great, and it was a huge bag of like breakfast food. And I got it to her in less than 10 minutes from the time that I picked it up. And she gave me a $10 tip, and she wrote even a note like, you know, like, good luck with whatever you're doing or blah, 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 blah. And I remember that day I had something else going on. So I wasn't just dressed like I was dressed like, I don't know what I was dressed like, but I definitely didn't look like I was planning on driving all day. Like I had somewhere to be after. So I was just dressed in what I was going to wear. And I remembered her opening the door and just, you know, just being very nice. Thank you so much. You know. And then when I get back to the car and go get on my next adventure, I see the tip come in. It's a $10 tip. I'm like, she didn't have to tip me $10 for that. Sometimes people don't tip at all. Most of the time, people don't tip at all.
Yeah, I know. The no tips are another way to get angry, and sometimes the most difficult deliveries have the no tips, and then the easiest ones have the best tips. It's a wild world out there. All right, let's talk a little food, but we'll do it with a little Nets angle. Back in the day, months ago, when you could go to the Barclays Arena and you could see the Brooklyn Nets, was there a spot at Barclays that you like to eat at?
I used to always go and get the fuku chicken sandwich, but then I got connected and hooked up a little bit and got into the sweet life and got to see what the sweets were like there. And, you know, they got their chicken fingers and hot dogs and salad spread. And then there's even the like 40/40 club and that like private area. And they have a very nice spread. It's like steak and penne vodka. I'm kind of spoiled now. I think I went into like the Calvin Klein suite entrance and got in there one day. The last two times I went to Barclays, we played the Suns, and before that we played the Sixers, and both times I was blessed. I got treated to some good food that wasn't just the like walk around food. The walk around food, I usually was getting the fuku chicken sandwich, but if you get the chance to go into the suites or go into the club areas, Barclays Center does it right. They've got some good chefs and some good spreads out there.
All right, how about back in your New Jersey days, Continental Airlines Arena favorite meal? And the only thing I can really think of is like a hot dog and chicken fingers. I don't know if there's anything else.
Yeah, I just remember getting fries back then. I only went there like once or twice as a kid, and I was so young. But I do remember getting like fries and, like you said, like hot dogs, just the traditional stuff. Continental Airlines Arena, just it seems so far back in my mind now. During the times when we were struggling and they were struggling to put people in there, I was not showing up. I remember they had a Big Sean concert. Big Sean was an emerging rapper in like 2009 or 2010. And my friend was trying to get me to go, and I wanted to go, but I couldn't get anybody else to go with us. And the offer was like $20 for a ticket, and you get to see, him perform at halftime. And no one wanted to go.
Oh, that's tremendous. What got you? What made you a Net fan and not a Knick fan? Even though in North Jersey there was a lot of Knick fans.
Of course. I mean, I don't know. I was very young, and it's great because The Last Dance is all everyone's talking about. Very young. I was like every other kid. I was a Jordan Bulls fan when I didn't know any better, and all I could see was like Mike and Gatorade commercials and Hanes commercials and whatever else. Jordan was every single place, Coca-Cola, McDonald's. So, of course, I was a Bulls fan and rooted for Jordan until I got into like middle school. And then, I always rooted for the hometown Nets. I remember always playing video games and picking the Nets and just wanting the Nets to be good and keeping an eye on the Nets in like the Kendall Gill era. And then, Keith Van Horn, Kerry Kittles, Jay Kidd. And then once the Nets kind of got a swagger about them, I realized once Jordan was on his way out and heading to the Wizards, I wasn't going to follow Jordan and be a Wizards fan. I've got this team right here that's more than pretty good. They've got some stars and, Richard Jefferson. And then once we got Vince Carter, I was fully on board. So I would say by the time I was like a teenager, I was a full New Jersey Nets fan. And, I really thought that we had a chance to win the finals. Obviously, we ran into the Spurs dynasty, and then obviously we got swept by the Lakers as well. But it was still a good time. It was still a good run. I just remember being young and buying, my mom buying me an authentic Jason Kidd jersey and getting my Vince Carter jersey. And I still have both of those jerseys. I remember I took my 12-year-old like school picture, and my mom asked me what I wanted to wear, and I wanted to wear my Jason Kidd jersey. And I just laugh looking back on it now. Like, that was a time in New Jersey where you could really be proud. Yeah. And like I said, I'm from the shore area, so I was an hour away from New York City. So all of the Knicks fans, I just never could get into the Knicks. I never really was a fan. I watched Jordan crush them, and then there was a little bit of a rivalry between New York and New Jersey. And, of course, me being from Monmouth County and not being up here yet, I was on the Jersey side.
Do you think Brooklyn should embrace their New Jersey history more?
Absolutely. I just saw my guy Pooch put out an article with Nets Daily about that. And this is something that we've talked about on Talkin Nets, and Nets Twitter is always talking about it. And there's this like weird like pull and tug and pull between, the Brooklyn people that, of course, love the fact that they have an NBA team that reps Brooklyn to the point where Notorious B.I.G. is damn near a mascot. And our City Edition jerseys say Bed-Stuy and they don't say Nets. But there's so much history and there's so many fans that are New Jersey fans that have come over with the team. Honestly, in 2012, I boycotted the team. I hated the fact that we only got two teams. We got the Devils, we got the Nets. And when they moved the Nets for like, I remember Jay-Z being involved, I was upset with that. And I just didn't like it. But then once 2013 came around, I went to a playoff game. I think it was Game 5, Bulls Nets. Yeah, I have it right up here on my wall. April 29th, 2013, round 1, Bulls Nets. And then I just saw what the Barclays Center looked like and what the energy was like. And then my like young mind of being like 9 at Continental Airlines Arena, I'm like, this is way better. Like, this is a way better vibe. This is way better energy. This is legit. I'm like, the music in here is great. I love how dark it is in the arena and like everybody's in black. I'm like, this is a way cooler vibe. I'm on board. And then since like 2013, I've been really locked in with the Nets.
Keith McPherson, host of Talkin Nets, John Boy Media. Keith, I appreciate you coming on this podcast. Mike delivers 2 questions I end all my guests with. So all I ask is complete honesty, okay? Number 1, best thing you ate in the last 7 days.
Best thing I ate in the last 7 days. You know what I've gotten into? And it's funny, this is not an ad, but Kyrie Irving is behind this. DeAndre Jordan is behind this. Beyond Burgers. So surprisingly enough, I've been doing a lot of shopping and really looking through everywhere that I'm shopping because of this pandemic. I got to go to places where, you got to get in line 30 minutes before the store opens. And I've really been trying to stock up, and I took a chance on ththese Beyond Burgers, and I might even make them today. They're delicious. There's, I don't know, all protein, no meat. And, you fry these burgers up, and I mean, they're a little expensive. They can run you for like $6 for 2 burgers, but they're worth it. And I would say that's in the front of my mind as far as like the best thing I've been eating recently. I haven't been able to go out. Obviously, I haven't ordered out too much just because we're spending enough on groceries as it is. If you start ordering out too much, you're going to be burning your money through this whole thing. But the not Impossible Burgers, the Beyond Burgers, Beyond Meat Burgers. You've seen Kyrie Irving do some ads for them. They're pretty good. If you haven't tried them, try them. They can't hurt, and they are actually they're better for you than regular burgers, and they taste just as good.
Yeah, no, I'm game to try anything. I don't care. I did the Impossible Whopper. My wife and I did a food review on that recently, and I liked it more than the regular Whopper.
Yeah, and it's kind of like
better.
It's like when you taste it and you know that it's better for you and the taste is there, it's like, why not switch to this? Why not eat this? And I haven't tried the one at Burger King yet, but I remember thinking, like, at first I was like, well, that's like against everything. Like, why would they even put that on the menu? And no, it's not. Like, now you get the people that are pulling up that want to order Whoppers, and there's one person in the car that's like, oh, I'm a vegan, or oh, I don't eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now they have an option.
Yeah, no, it was not as dry. It had better flavor. I was all about it. And then the final question is, 6 months from now, I guess we're all allowed to leave the quarantine. Life's back to normal. Let's say you're sending out wedding invitations. 6 months from now, are you inviting me to your wedding?
That's funny. So 6 months from now is October. Let's say it's October 21st. I am engaged right now. I am looking to get married in November. As far as like, I don't know, this.
How about this?
This whole thing has changed everything. Luckily, I proposed last summer, and I didn't rush, because the first question you get is, when's the date? When's the date? When's the date? And I didn't rush it because I had a lot of things pending with, the Yankees stuff I do, the Nets stuff I do with the Yes Network, and then John Boy Media, and us opening the office, and us getting into the season. And I kind of just was telling my girl and my family, hey, we got to hold, we got to wait. I've got a lot of things in the works. So I haven't invited anyone to my wedding. I don't know when the wedding's going to be. My girl and I would like to lock in the date of 11/11/2020. I don't know how that's going to be at the courthouse. No, you can't predict anything. The future is
sure.
The future is so unknown right now. But
see, the problem is this question was a little too real. I usually ask people and they're like, "Nah, you're not coming," or they've been married for a while. But now I'm like, "Oh crap, I shouldn't have asked this one. This one hit way too hard at home."
Someone that is literally in it, and nobody can tell, nobody can know. I had a friend that had a wedding on July 24th. They had to scrap that. I have a friend that just sent invites out for November 4th, and they're hoping that we can do that. And I feel so blessed and thankful that I knew that as the man in the relationship, I had to figure out how to get the ring, how to pull off the, getting on one knee and get the pictures for Instagram and make sure that all looked right. I had no idea that you had to have a date ready. I didn't realize the next question I would get the next day after people found out. When's the date? When's the date? When's the date? And I'm like, I don't know when the date is. At the time we were in London. I proposed in London the day before the London series with the Red Sox and Yankees. And I told people, we got a whole baseball season to get through. I don't know when the date is. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe I'll write you down on the list. When we put together invites, you might be on there. But as of right now, nobody is on there because there's no way we could have a wedding in the near future.
Keith, had a blast. Thanks for joining Mike Delivers. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith, for taking some time and joining my podcast, Mike Delivers. Enjoyed that conversation. I also enjoyed when I went back was on your podcast months ago when this pandemic was starting, and it was crazy because that was like right after the Nets defeated the Lakers, and a huge win on the road, which right now feels like a bazillion years ago. But thank you, Keith, for hopping on with me. I had mentioned that I would talk about theprosclub.com. So theprosclub.com is a website that I co-created with Anthony Pierno about 2.5 years ago. And on there is content from current and former pro athletes, coaches, GMs, and I helped create their own podcast, which is super duper cool. Love doing it. It's been awesome. So I'm going to start doing a little bit more of that again. I've got some things in the works, but also it's kind of transformed and morphed a little and grown up that not only now is there content with former pro athletes doing their own podcast, there's content with producers like myself and just creative people that need an outlet to talk with other podcasts. So on there you got Bad Weather Fans with my buddy Alex. We do a little sports podcast, and then my friend Leon Oliver, we have our podcast Outside the Box. We're just getting into general life bullshit, and we go back and forth. I've known Leon for a long time now. I met Leon back in Charlottesville, VA. We had the podcast that we did about 50 episodes in Charlottesville in like 2008. People liked it, so we're bringing it back. So it's all under the umbrella of the Pros Club. There's going to be more content on there. I highly recommend checking it out at theprosclub.com. It's my baby, so please go over there, spread the word, tell people about it. I'm just trying to build this shit. So everything that you guys do helps, man. I know I'm saying this. I'm recording this in my wife's closet, but I believe in it. I believe in this podcast. I believe in Mike Delivers. So it's all just kind of part of it. The Pros Club, Mike Delivers, it's all interchangeable. It's all part of it. It's all building this brand with all these different podcasts. And it would not be possible without you guys. I really do mean that. You have made this fun. I get the biggest kick out of people reaching out to me and telling me their stories on the road, telling me about foods that they tried, trying things that I recommended. I had people out of the blue tell me they liked the pod. I mean, I can't tell you how much that means to me. On Thursday's episode 70, we're closing in on episode 100. Crazy how much the time flies. Crazy shit right there. Thank you to Josh Guterman. Thank you to Keith McPherson, all for coming on to this podcast. Also, the music you hear, that's from Beautiful Noise. This podcast would not be the same. They are the soundtrack to Mike Delivers. On Thursday, my wife and I try some ice from Rita's. Looking forward to that. This has been episode number 69. We'll see you next time for episode number 69 plus 1. That's 70, folks. They made up their minds and they started packing. They left before the sun came up that day. A exit to eternal summer slacking. But where were they going without ever knowing the way? Make up the wine, and they got to talking. Now had more important things to say. And then the car broke down, they started walking. But where were they going without ever knowing the way? Anyone can see the road that they walk on is paved in gold. It's always summer, it'll never get cold. They'll never get hungry, they'll never get old and gray. You can see the shadow wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway, they're happier there today.